All of your life, you've been chasing revision tips, study hacks, trying to find the perfect method to learn the most amount of content in the smallest amount of time, and it's never worked. You've never got the result that you wanted. That's why you're still here. The biggest mistake I see students make is that they think they need to find the best techniques first. They need to form the perfect methods first, and only then can they completely transform the way they study and learn. But watching study videos every week, noting down techniques, reading articles about it, all of it is just making yourself feel like you're progressing, when all you're doing is procrastinating from actually improving the way you learn. The actual difficult actions you need to take while you study. If you want to improve the way you learn, and I mean actually in real life improve the way you're studying day in, day out, these next steps that I'm going to talk about are what I did week after week, again and again. It's what I teach people on here, and it is what I suggest you do before you watch another single study video. Number one, you need to improve just one part of your process. In your very next study session, just incorporate one improvement and stick with it for a week. All that means is that you switch one of the stupid things that you're doing that you know is not helping you learn, for example, rereading or highlighting or summarizing using AI and reading that, and just switch that out with, for example, creating questions from the information. That's a great way to start, and it doesn't need to be perfect in your head beforehand. Don't obsess and fret about every exact issue that you have with creating questions, because the purpose of creating them is that they will allow you to assess yourself on what you've learned at a later point. So they have more utility than copying from the board and making notes. And also they'll help you engage with the content as well. And that's it. Create questions during your next classes, during your next revisions, instead of making notes. Do it for the whole week with all of your topics. And no watching any tutorials on how to do it, no study videos in fact until you've done it for a week. You've watched plenty out there, it's not advanced calculus. Actually give it a full go for a week and a full logical try. Number two, during this week, you're gonna get stuck. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna have doubts whether this even will work. So assess and persevere. Be logical about the issues. When you come across an obstacle with using this, it doesn't work in some case, act as a coach for yourself and find a logical solution. And this is something that is so simple to do, but we've been spoon-fed all of our information for so long that we've lost the ability to individually come across a problem and solve it. Getting stuck is good, experimentation is good, so don't get disheartened if it isn't working perfectly. You might make too many questions, so shorten the amount next time. The questions you make might just suck. Well then look at your exam, figure out what type of questions you can be assessed on, and refine your approach. It might even take more time than you expected, but trust me, it is taking a lot less time than the gajillion notes that you will be making otherwise. This, by the way, is how I started out too, 6 years ago. I learned that making questions and to test myself on them later is a lot smarter. It's just way more effective than making notes that I'm never gonna read. And when that happened, boom, I just started to make questions from the content that I was doing next week straight away. And it worked. It worked for biology, geography, any content-based subjects I had. I could literally see how much time I was saving by just not copying from the board and textbooks and refining my notes and doing this whole thing when I get home, all of it. But oh no, what about chemistry, maths, and physics? Oh, it doesn't work for them as well. They're logical subjects, they're not content-based. I didn't just quit on it or jump to another YouTube video because, oh, it doesn't work. Because I still do need to test myself on those subjects, right? Notes are still a waste of time, right? So making questions still makes a lot of sense for them. Therefore, I logically thought, okay, what questions can I make for chemistry, physics, math that will actually help me with my revision and help me practice the problems? These subjects aren't about the content, they're about the questions, assessing your ability to recognize the types of problems that they're asking about and then solving them. So leading from that logically, I made 1 to 2 questions for every type of problem that can come up in every subtopic. So that I don't just go to the textbook and do 10 or 20 questions of the same problems using the same formulas again and again. But instead, in my list of questions that I will create, have each question test me on a different type of problem that I can be assessed on. See, I had a problem with the method, and then I found a logical solution that worked for those subjects in a way that made sense. I didn't just quit. I figured out a way that would actually help me in this case. How can I integrate this testing into the way I usually study for these subjects? The issue that a lot of people have is that they're looking for a cop-out. Someone to hold their hand through every single issue. People can give you the guides, the full methods, even the live tutorials on how they do stuff exact step by step. But you are the only one who can actually take responsibility, who actually has to take responsibility for their process. To be a scientist, to try and figure out how can I make this learning happen for me in the best way? Number 3, re-strategize. Now, when you've actually made one big change in your process, experimented with it, and improved the way you learn and actually integrated it into the way you do things normally, now is when you should go back and strategize. What's the next thing I can do to level up? What's the next change in my study process that will improve how I learn? And then you just repeat the first 2 steps. You choose one thing to improve your study process and actually stick with it until you're good at it. You experiment, see how it helps, reflect, change it in the ways you need to, and then switch to a new thing to improve again and again, week after week. See, the reason I've suggested that you do this in this reverse order, where you're first taking action, then you're reflecting, then you're step by step building up one improvement at a time over the weeks, rather than you coming up with the perfect method first. The reason I highly recommend that you do it this way is because that perfect method will never happen, because it is too heavy of a lift to do. Like, how are you expecting yourself to perfectly do all of these techniques and do them continuously one after another and be good at them when you've not even done one of them ever? You then go and research again, figure out why you're doing it wrong, what you're doing wrong. The more you try and find those perfect hacks, the further you'll be pushed away from doing anything at all, because you'll get frustrated and you'll revert back to the way you always do things that never work. Now, I've communicated a very simple idea. You need to incorporate improvements into your study process week after week, reflect and experiment with them, and treat it like a full thing that you're like a full project that you're doing. Now, what does this mean practically? What techniques, what practices do you add in next, and in what order do you do them? And to be honest, it doesn't matter much, as long as what you're doing, the way you're improving, is going to help you with the main pillars of studying, which are number 1, testing, and number 2, layering. If the things you're doing every week are going to help improve those pillars, then you are pushing forward in the right direction. The next one, for example, that I did in my study process was figure out, okay, now that I've made these questions, how do I actually test myself? Not just in my normal revision, but at every part of the studying process, because apparently testing is very important. I was trying to figure out how learning and testing can be intertwined. It's a simple idea, right? But it took me absolutely ages to put into practice and incorporate it into the normal method of my recall questions that I was doing. But once I did it, once I actually started testing myself with the learning, actually testing myself first, then learning, it sped up my revision like nothing before. But for your reference point, I will give you a full list of practices that you should implement into your study sessions, into your actual process, and the way you should incorporate it. I'll give that here, and I'll give that in the description as well. And also, this is probably the ideal order you should do it in. But realize that this is a very gradual process that requires a lot of experimentation and feedback at every junction, every step, because building the skill of learning is inherently a slow process. And that's a good thing. The slower you build a skill, the better you will learn it. My overall point is that if I just give you the best, most perfect method, it will never work. That's why in every video I try and give you as many practical actions as I can, steps that you can do right now to eliminate that idea that everything needs to be perfect before you can take that action. Because with learning how to learn, the best way, and I'm saying this again, is to incorporate new improvements week after week into the way you are already doing things. And the thing that really made the difference with how consistently and diligently I did it over the years was the fact that I took responsibility for my process. I planned it all out. I fixed my mistakes, improved, saw the progress. This is your process. It is your mission to get better, to learn faster, to beat those exams, so that you can create enough time for everything else you want to do outside of your academics. Honestly, that is the only way I see students get good at this. When they take autonomy over their process and make it a mission to get faster and also more effective. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments if you have any issues with your study process, anything you're finding difficult. I'm literally making videos out of the comments these days, and this as well was inspired by a different comment. Let me know what you think about the video overall as well. Leave a like, spam the comments, subscribe, you do the usual stuff, and I'll see you in the next one.